Welcome to Medical Student. Today we're going to talk about the epidemiology. So let's discuss the epidemiology. Epidemiology is the branch of medicine which deal with the incident, distribution, and possible control of disease and other factors relating to health. Epidemiologists attempt to determine what factors are associated with disease, like the risk factor, and what factor may protect the people or animal against the disease, like the protective factor. So in a simple way, epidemiology is a study of disease, like where the disease is occurring, when the disease is occurring, and the place of the disease, and the time of the disease, and what disease that is occurring, to keep track on history to present time, okay, like where the disease occurring previously, and then getting the data from different regions and try to make algorithm and try to create a prediction that in future when the disease is going to occur again, and like where the disease are going to come next year or not, and which year the disease will be coming to hit us again. This is the idea of epidemiology, to find out not only the cause of the disease but to know about the disease where you were. So to know about the epidemiology, we have to main focus on two terminology. One is prevalence and another is incidence. So prevalence and incidence are frequently confused. Prevalence refers to the proportion of persons who have a condition at or during a particular time period, whereas incidence refers to the proportion or rate of person who develop a condition during a particular time period. So in a simple way, prevalence, the disease that has already occurred in the region, and plus the new outbreak of the same disease occur in that region. So that is the prevalence study, like the previous plus the new or present outbreak, okay. So in incidence, the newly developed disease, okay, so new cases at that time and the person are at risk, okay. So that is the incidence. Two broad type of epidemiological study design: observational study and experimental study. Observational study, we do not interfere in the process, simply observe the disease and associated factor, okay. So we just look from the outside, we just observe the disease and associated factor, but we do not interfere in the process. Then experimental study, we just do some intervention and we look for the effect of that intervention, okay. And actually we involve in the experimental study. Observational study, descriptive study, analytical study. So analytical study, further subclassification, control study and cohort study. And experimental study, randomized control study, field trial, community trial. So randomized control study mean that like we use patient as a unit of study and mostly used for the new treatment or diseases, okay. And then the field trial, we use healthy individual as a unit of study, and mostly it is for the preventive agent, like for some vaccination purpose. So we use the healthy individual to protect from the disease. Then community trial, like the communities as unit of studies, okay. So in this case, like we do some intervention in some villages and we did not do some intervention in other villages, so we just study in a community wise, okay. Observational studies, descriptive study, analytical study, okay. It is a part of observational study. And then analytical study have the further subclassification, case control and cohort study. Experimental study, randomized control study, field trial, community trial. Descriptive study, guys, descriptive study, so the disease that is observed in the community as it occur. In a typical descriptive study, the disease distribution is studied in a population and described in terms of time, place, person. Let me tell you what does it mean by time, place, person. Actually, the time mean that like we look for the disease, either the disease are getting less effective or it is getting worse from before by the time. And the place, like we look for the place where are the disease effect are more and where are the less, okay. And the person, like we look for the family, like what family are more affected and what are the race, okay, and what are the age of the person. So we look in that area. Then this study give us some clue regarding the risk factor. Okay, so actually we look for the risk factor. What are the risk factor that are associated for the disease? Okay, so one or more which may actually be the cause of the disease, like one risk factor or many more risk factor can be the cause of the disease. Anyway, so then we have the case report. It is also a type of descriptive study of a single individual person. Okay, of a single individual with the studies with the disease. Okay, a case report is descriptive study of a single individual with the disease. Then a case series is a study of small group of cases of the disease. Okay, so in this we study a small group of with the disease. Then actually a case series and case report may be the first to provide us a clue in identifying the disease. Okay, so example of descriptive study, like there was cholera outbreak in 18 in London. So at that time bacteria was not known. They were searching for cases in population. Prevalence was more in around a particular hand pump. Okay, so those who were near to that particular hand pump, so disease was more there. Okay, so the prevalence was more there. So what they got a clue, they just got a clue like the causative factor is infectious and transmit through the water. So for the control measure, what they do, they're pulling out the handle of the hand pump. Okay, they remove out the handle of the hand pump, and after several days what they see, the disease are controlling. So what was that? Actually that was the descriptive study. Case control study design, a type of analytical observational study. Okay, so case control study, so it is a type of analytical control study. Remember guys, there was analytical study, so in that there was a case control study. Okay, and cohort study. So first case control study. So in this case what we do, we organize the two group. Okay, the one is cases, the one is called cases, the other is called control. Okay, so set of cases are actually the patient of disease. Okay, so cases have the diseases. Okay, and control don't have disease, they are the without the disease but otherwise similar to the diseases. Okay, and then we do the matching. For the matching, actually we what we do, we do like the family, okay, the lifestyle, okay, and the age, the gender, everything we match with the cases. Okay, so control with the cases. Okay, so control, set of control match with the set of cases. Then we take a history of exposure. Okay, so what are the exposure and what are identify risk factor? To identify risk factor, so we take the history of exposure. So we arise the questionnaires. Okay, so we ask some questions and we keep the previous record. Okay, then what we do, the prevalence of exposure in cases is compared to that in control. So then we compare the both group. Okay, one is control group, one is cases group. So we compare the prevalence of exposure. Then case control. Actually, let me tell you, there are two terminology. One is risk factor, other is protective factor. So risk factor are those factor which are more in the cases. Okay, which are more in the cases. So actually remember guys, cases are those who have the diseases. Okay, so if they have more factor, so that's mean there are the factor, there are the risk factor of associated disease. Then we have the protective factor. Protective factor are those factor which are more in control. And remember, control are those who are not disease, who are without diseases but somewhat similar with the cases. All right, so also factor which are significantly higher in control are noted as the possibly protective factor. Then for the risk factor, what we do to identify the risk factor, we do the odd ratio. So how we do the odd ratio, we're going to see in the following table. So we have the cases A plus B, we have the controls A, C plus D. So cases A have the risk factor present and B risk factor are absent in B cases. Then C risk factor present, D risk factor absent. Then what we do, we do A into D upon B into C, and that's how we can identify the odds ratio and identify the risk factor. Another type of analytical study, so we organize one group of people exposed to the suspected risk factor. So we just think like that those people are exposed to the risk factor. If those people are exposed to the suspected risk factor, so there are called exposure cohort. Another group of the people similar to the exposure cohort, okay, they are similar to the exposure cohort, but they are not exposed, okay, they are not exposed to any suspected risk factor. So they are called control or not exposed cohort. So two group, guys, one exposure cohort, another control or non exposed cohort. Cohort study now. So cohort study is actually how we do the cohort study. So we make sure none of the member in both the group have the disease under investigation. Remember, guys, we do this study for to look for what are the risk factor who develop the disease, okay. So if someone have already disease, so we exclude that member from the cohort study. That is not the part of the cohort study, okay. So both the cohort, one is exposed, another non-exposed to the risk factor, are followed for the definite period at a definite or regular interval for the development of disease. So what we do, one is exposed group, another is non-exposed group. So we follow them, okay, we follow them for a definite period, for a regular interval, for the development of disease, okay. So we look for either the development of diseases is more in the exposure or is more in the non-exposure. Anyway, the incidence of disease in exposure is compared to the incidence of disease in the control, okay, non-exposed cohort. So if the incidence in the exposed cohort is significantly higher than there in the control non-exposed cohort, there is associated confirmed. So what we do, actually, if the incidence of disease is more in the exposed cohort, okay, and compared to the control exposure cohort, so what we suspect, actually the risk factor was more in the exposed cohort, right? So we suspect that is the risk factor. We almost got the idea, this is the risk factor. Now the risk factor are many more, okay, so we yet not sure what are the specific risk factor. So for the specification of the risk factor, to identify the specific risk factor, we do the relative risk. It is similar to the odd ratio. So we have the exposed cohort A plus B, and we have the non-exposed C plus D. So A are those who develop the disease, okay, and B did not develop the disease. C, non-exposure cohort, who were not exposed to the suspected risk factor but developed disease, and D did not develop disease. Then what we do, incident among exposed, so A upon A plus B and C upon C plus D, incident among non-exposed. Then A, okay, A upon A plus B upon C upon C plus D. So that is for the relative risk, okay. So that all about the observational study, and our next video we were gonna talk about the experimental study. So I will suggest you to watch our new video about the experimental study. So thank you so much for watching this video, and if you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and comment on this video, so that we can make many more videos about the preventive medicines and many other subjects. So thank you so much, stay safe, bye bye.